So the college football playoff rankings have been revealed. This is the last rankings that we're going to see before Selection Sunday after the conference championship games get played. And first of all, let's talk about the teams that got left out. South Carolina, it's a flat-out crime that they're ranked at 14 behind Ole Miss, Miami, and Alabama. I understand that they lost the head-to-head, but what bothers me about where South Carolina is ranked is that it shows the inconsistency that the committee has when it comes to how they judge these teams. All year long, they kind of were just saying, F strength of schedule. We don't care who you play. We care about the eye test. We care about how dominant you look. And if you're going to mainly base your criteria off the eye test, what did that mean? That South Carolina is one of the best 12 teams at the moment? You see, the thing about the eye test is that it's about how good we feel you are at this moment. At the time that South Carolina lost to Bama and Ole Miss, they obviously were not the same team. The last 6 games of the season, South Carolina has beat Texas A&M, Missouri, and Lenore Sellers has been the hottest quarterback in the whole entire nation, and yet they get ranked behind an Ole Miss team that lost to LSU, they lost to Kentucky, they lost on the floor, on the road in the swamp to Billy Napier in Florida. I mean, if we are going to just change up how we're going to judge these teams on a week-to-week basis, I'd rather not have a committee. I'd rather just go back to a BCS computer model, let that pick the teams that get in, because I want consistency. Don't y'all want consistency? Don't tell me for the first 10 weeks of the season, you're judging teams by the eye test, but then when South Carolina from the eye test looks like one of the best 12 teams, all of a sudden you want to say, well, we're going to put Alabama over them because they're 3-1 against teams ranked in the CFP rankings. They're 6-1 against teams above 500. You should have been doing that to begin with. The hell? Does that make any sense to you? For the first couple of rankings, they were saying, we're judging these teams based off the eye test. All of a sudden, when the eye test doesn't favor Alabama and it favors South Carolina, all of a sudden, we want to go back to properly factoring in strength of win, strength of schedule. This is a bunch of crap, man. Burn this thing down. Let's go back to the computers, because I'm getting sick and tired of this doggone inconsistency. There's no way you and anybody on that playoff committee cannot tell me with your own eyes that South Carolina has not played like one of the best 12 teams this year. Tell me I'm lying. Tell me I'm lying. Over the last 6 weeks, South Carolina has been one of the best teams in college football. I don't give a damn about the head-to-head when you're losing to crappy teams like Oklahoma, when you're losing to Vanderbilt, when you're losing to Kentucky. F all that, bro. F all that. Keep judging these teams by how you've been all year long, which is the eye test. And over the last 6 weeks, the eye test shows that South Carolina has been one of the 12 best teams in college football. You just don't get to say, well, Alabama beat Georgia, and Alabama beat Missouri, and Alabama has all these good wins against teams with winning records, and you just ignore their ugly losses. Does South Carolina have any losses as bad as Alabama losing to Vandy, Ole Miss losing to Kentucky, Florida? Come on now. All of South Carolina's losses have come to ranked teams. South Carolina had their starting quarterback, Lenore Sellers, injured in one of them. Last year, FSU missed the playoffs because Jordan Travis was injured. I'm getting tired of this freaking inconsistency, man. The Gamecocks, what happened to them tonight is a flat-out robbery. It's a crime where South Carolina is ranked, because all year long, they were judging teams based off the eye test. South Carolina, the last 2 months, has passed the eye test with flying colors, and yet they're only ranked 14. And what really disgusts me the most is that they beat Clemson. And Clemson, if they beat SMU, is going to be in the playoffs. Wow. Now, Miami being ranked at 12, I don't have a problem with. When you lose to Georgia Tech, you lose to Syracuse, you don't have any quality wins at all. You really don't have an argument. The only argument you probably could make is, well, we got the best quarterback in college football. That's about it. BYU, I've seen some outrage about where they're ranked. Well, let's just be honest. Nobody cares about the Big 12. And I don't think the Big 12 is being disrespected. Just because your conference from within is tough and it's cannibalizing itself doesn't mean you're on the same level playing field as everybody else. Do you have a win against SMU? Yes, you do. But you lost to Kansas, which that probably is a worse loss than Alabama losing to Vandy, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss losing to Kentucky and Florida, because at least the teams that Alabama and Ole Miss lost to are bowl eligible. Kansas ain't going bowling, so you really don't have an argument. Then you lose to Arizona State. Only one Big 12 team is going to get in, and that's whoever wins their conference championship. I don't have any problem with the Big 12 being disrespected. I think the disrespect is warranted. Now let's get on to my next takeaway. Alabama, not only do they just sneakily get into the playoffs, you can say it's brand bias, whatever you want to call it, they're going to be in this thing. And not only is Alabama in the playoffs, but they also have one of the easiest paths to the national championship. As the 11th seed, in the first round, they play Notre Dame on the road. Then if they beat Notre Dame, they get the luxury of playing SMU. We could see Alabama lose 3 games, 2 of them coming to Vandy and Oklahoma, get into the playoffs, and by the time this thing is all said and over, you see them competing for the national championship potentially, because all that matters is that Alabama plays their best football in the playoffs. If we get the Jalen Milroe that we saw during the first half of the season, go off against Wisconsin, played well, the first half and some change against Georgia, they could go the distance. Now, I'm not saying that them playing Notre Dame is a guaranteed win, because Notre Dame matches up very well with Alabama. They're really good against the run. And if you can slow down Alabama's rushing attack, you force Jalen Milroe to beat you from inside the pocket, you got a really good chance to win that if you're Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish. Now, another thing that kind of upsets me is how the conference championship games, if you are Oregon or Penn State, you got more incentives to lose them than you do to win. And here's why I say that. Although the idea of a first round bye sounds good, if Oregon wins the Big Ten title over Penn State and they remain the 1 seed, you know who they're going to have to play in the second round? Either Tennessee or Ohio State. Meanwhile, if you are Penn State, you know, and you lose to the Big Ten champion, which could be Oregon, then you get the luxury of playing either whoever wins the Big 12 title, rather that be Arizona State or Iowa State, and then in the second round, you get to play Boise State. So Alabama and Penn State, if everything plays out like how I think it should, they got 2 of the easiest paths to the Final Four. Because if you're Oregon, the last team you want to see again in the second round, fresh off a bye, is Ohio State. And the thing about byes is that, in theory, it sounds great to have because you have an additional week to rest up, game plan, practice, but it also can be a disadvantage for you because that team that have to play that first round game, they're not going to come in rusty like how you have the capability to do. Because remember, there is going to be a good amount of time between the next time Oregon plays, if they win the Big Ten championship, versus, let's say you play a Tennessee or Ohio State. They may not be as well rested as what you are, but they're not rusty. And if you're Oregon, I really want to avoid seeing Ohio State at all costs. So really, with how these teams are seated at the moment, of course, things can change depending on the results of the conference title games. You know, Bama and Penn State, they got very easy paths to the Final Four. And if I'm Penn State and I'm James Franklin, I'm not really tripping on winning the Big Ten title. I'd rather lose this, get to play the Big 12 champion, and get to play Boise State in the second round, because that gives me the best chance to make it to the Final Four and potentially get into that national championship game. Because if you win that thing, you know, yeah, you get the first round bye, but I mean, what if Oregon ends up dropping down to the 5th seed, right? I mean, you really don't want to have to play any team that's as good as what Ohio State is potentially. So I really don't see the benefit of winning the conference championship if I'm Penn State. I'd rather lose that thing and tell the committee, just keep me where I'm at. You feel me? Can we just wave the white flag on a Big Ten title game? Because y'all may say, oh, JT, that's pussy. Is it really? What matters more? Winning the Big Ten championship or winning the national championship? To me, winning the national championship means more. I mean, you're telling me in the first round, I'm going to have the ability to play the Big 12 title or the Big 12 champion, and then get to play Boise State in the second round? Come on now. Who would pass that up? If I'm James Franklin, I'm saying, man, after the Big Ten championship, man, we focus on the playoffs, baby. Arizona State, Iowa State, let's start game planning already. Let's start game planning for Ashton, Genty, and Boise State.